I am Jon Werner. I believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God, and because of that faith, I stand before you today. It is wonderful to be with you. We share in some recent pains. I was a long-time member of Whitewater Community Church that became Crosspoint, that became the chapel, and for issues I won't go into in public, I am no longer there, but it was a very sad thing for me to leave that. Some of us are meeting on campus on Sunday mornings. We are just calling ourselves a gathering. We're going through the book of Acts, and that has been wonderful. I've actually loved that. Things I never saw really come alive for me through that. I think it's great that you were going through Mark. I have slides, and I'd like to carry on with Michael. Just consider this more of a children's thing. So I'm going to ask you to engage and involve. We don't have a tug-of-row, but it actually fits very well what he asked you to think about and what I'm going to ask you to think about. I'm going to kind of break it up into pieces. So how about we'll just stand when I get to one of the main slides, and we can stand and read the word together. All right? So we do that. So this is, Michael led us up to this, and there were some interesting challenges and questions about the Pharisees and Jesus' power. So we're going to pick up now. So the interesting piece here is that Greg gave me the title Time to Get Away. And at first I was like, what? Yeah. And then the more I looked at it, the more I realized is that that is exactly what I want to communicate with you. So Mark is, thank you, a gospel of action. Thank you very much. There's this eutos there, I think it's eutos, that's like 40 some times, immediately, and then. And so if you please try to go to the Mark drama either Sunday night or Monday, or you can go on Tuesday in Janesville. It's a wonderful way to catch the action. It's always moving. And do bring a friend. It's a wonderful thing to experience the gospel in this way. So the first 9 chapters, Jesus is primarily in Galilee, and then he moves towards Judea and Jerusalem to his death and resurrection. So we are in Galilee, which means we're up in the upper part of the story here. And where are they? Does anyone have an idea as they're in chapter 3? They're in Galilee, but beyond that, anyone have an idea where they are? Well, near the sea. Yeah. In Mark 1, it says they went to Capernaum. In Mark 2, they again entered Capernaum. And then in the beginning of Mark 3, they go another time to the synagogue. So my thought, and I'm just not dogmatic about this, is that they're in Capernaum. So the lake would then be what? It would be the Sea of Galilee. Okay, so they're up in the north, and that's going to be important to the story here. So, I'm stuck again. Can you just see a little advance? There we go. Okay, he withdrew with his disciples to the lake. So this is the Sea of Galilee. But let's just pause right there. What's been happening? He's been healing. He's been challenged by the Pharisees. There's a lot of things going on. And what is Jesus' response? He withdraws. Yeah. You've seen this already, but or maybe you haven't. That is a modern picture of the Sea of Galilee. And that's somewhere around Capernaum. So there is a potential hill. We don't know exactly where Jesus went, but that's the type of thing. So this is where they are. And in chapter 1, you would have heard this already. Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. Doesn't that fit exactly with what Michael was asking us? How do we resist those influences in the world? Well, Jesus demonstrates this. My takeaway is it's always so wonderful when you get to prepare because you learn so much, you get so much yourself. And my takeaway is exactly this. Who am I to think that I can jump into life and be busy, busy, busy without having this personal time with Jesus. Jesus modeled this, needed this, showed that it was that time away that was so important to him. We see this also in Luke. Yet the news about him spread all the more, so that crowds of people came to hear him and to be healed of their sicknesses. But Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. So our challenge, I think, is how are we doing in finding those times to get away, to be with Jesus? So that's, you're going to see, I hope, by the end, how I'm going to tie this all together, because I really just taken the very first phrase here for my first point about time to be with Jesus. All right, so now this goes on further. I'll read this now. Jesus withdrew with his disciples to the lake, and a large crowd from Galilee followed. So here again is that press of people. Why? Because of what he's doing, because of healing. There are all these people that we're going to see in this passage that want to come. Now, this was interesting to me. I knew some of this, but there was something I clearly didn't do. So I'm going to read this and I'm going to ask you a question. When they heard about all he was doing, many people came to him from Judea, Jerusalem, Idumea, and the regions across the Jordan and around Tyre and Sidon. Sometimes you just read through these things. So, Galilee, right? Some of this is pretty obvious, but which way is Judea from Galilee? It is south, right? And Jerusalem is part of Judea. So those are south. I'm going to skip Idumea for a moment. Across the Jordan, so if here's Galilee, across the Jordan would be east. Tyre and Sidon, north and west. Where's Idumea? Do you know? I didn't know.
It is, I think, south of Israel proper. It is the land that Esau.
Exactly. That's right. It's south. It's south of Jerusalem. Hebron is it's part of modern day Israel. I don't think that map is going to load, so I'll show you this one. I mean, you can't see that very well. But there we are, and Idumea is down there down here. So Judea, Samaria, Galilee, there's Tyre and Sidon, and actually Capernaum is over here. All right? So why does this matter? Greg just brought in an important point. Edom comes from Esau, Jacob's brother. Hebron, chief city, part of modern-day Israel. But there was often tension between Israel and Edom. And if you read Obadiah is scathing because when the Babylonians were attacking Jerusalem, the Edomites basically said, fine. They gave him up. So now let's think about this. People are coming from all directions, including some, it's not just the Samaritans that many Jews had trouble with, but with the Idumeans. And here they all are pressing in and wanting to see Jesus. Isn't that an interesting thing? That would have been a very different crowd, a very mixed crowd. All right, so let's, if you would, let's stand, and if you can, could you join with me? Let's read all of this together from Mark 3, 7 through 12. Jesus withdrew with his disciples to the lake, and a large crowd from Galilee followed. When they heard about all he was doing, many people came to him from Judea, Jerusalem, Idumea, and the regions across the Jordan and around Tyre and Sidon. Jesus withdrew with the disciples to the lake, and a large crowd from Galilee followed. Because of the crowd, he told his disciples to have a small boat ready for him to keep the people from crowding him. For he had healed many, so that those with diseases were pushing forward to touch him. Whenever the impure spirits saw him, they fell down before him and cried out, "You are the Son of God." But he gave them strict orders not to tell others about him. Thank you. You may be seated. I'll start with this, and then we'll go on to a few more verses after this. There are a number of interesting things going on here, and I've alluded to some of this. But again, there's Jesus withdrew. Now he's going down to the shoreline. And one of the interesting things is because of the crush, he gets into the boat so that he can teach without that crush of people coming in upon him. So why is this happening? People are desperate. They see their need, and they see that touching Jesus, or Jesus touching them, can bring healing. I think I was always open to this verse, but what totally changed my life was my first trip with Abby in 2006 was with Noel, and going to Kieselet, and it's Niku is from Kieselet and then Kiernoge, and it was in Kiernoge where I gave a message from the Bible, and then there was this long prayer time where everyone was praying for like a half an hour, and I was exhausted. And the leader of that thing said, I think we need to pray some more. I don't think God's done. And I'm like, oh, really, God? I can't do this. And in that time, a young man came to faith in Christ for the first time decision for Christ, and there was a physical healing. And while we were all praying, but it was just like, God, thank you that you are so much bigger than my tiredness, my lack of faith. And so verses like this really come alive to me because I've seen it. I took 7 trips total. The second one was 2008 when Abby went for the first time. And it has been life-changing for me. So I don't really understand. So I've been studying the Bible now since around 1978. So is that 40-some years? I don't have Bible school training, but I've studied the Bible. But one of the nice things about coming in like this is I don't have to be the expert. I don't have to have all the answers. And I don't know exactly why Jesus said not to tell others. Because the words are true. My only speculation here, and I may be wrong, is that it wasn't coming from a place of faith. They recognized that he was the Son of God, but he was waiting for his time. He was waiting for that opportunity when it would be declared as it was in the final days in Jerusalem before he was nailed to the cross. So again, here's the first piece of this, that he is preaching, he is healing, and there is response here from people who have been demon-possessed. I'll read this next one for us. Jesus went up on a mountainside. There's another, right, getting away. And this time, what does he do? He's calling to him those he wanted, and they came to him. He appointed 12 that they might be with him, and they might send them out to preach and to have authority to drive out demons. These are the 12 he appointed: Simon, to whom he gave the name Peter; James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John. To them he gave the name Boanerges, which means sons of thunder; Andrew, Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, Thomas, James, son of Alphaeus, Thaddeus, Simon the Zealot, and Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him. The different Gospels and recorded, the names vary slightly, so it's not an exact match, but I think I've pretty well captured this in this next slide. Most of us are somewhat familiar, especially with the names at the top and the bottom, right? We have probably the greatest understanding of Simon and Andrew, of James and John. Some of the others are a little less discussed. We don't know as much about them. I love one translation, instead of sons of thunder, passionate sons. They were the ones, willing to call down fire for people that they thought were not doing the right thing. There was a lot of what? A lot of bickering, a lot of arguing, a lot of not understanding Jesus and what he was about to do. But think of some of the other differences here. Matthew was a Jewish man who was what? A tax collector, working for Rome. He probably had the greatest amount of money. But as I thought about it, Simon and Andrew have a home in Capernaum. So they at least weren't poor. They were fishermen, but maybe they were middle class. I don't know, but they weren't poor. But there's differences here in terms of background. Can you imagine Simon the Zealot having a one-on-one with Matthew? Simon the Zealot is the one who was wanting to overthrow Rome. That would have been an interesting time to hear those two talking to each other. What's that?
From a distance.
Maybe, yeah, maybe from a distance. So, think about this. Some fishermen, at least one tax collector, a zealot. This would have been a rowdy group. And Jesus brings them, calls them, and this is the ordination, basically, the commissioning of them as his disciples. And did you notice who's missing? There's not a single person from the rabbinical schools. There are none of the scholars of the day. He didn't choose one. As a professor, I noticed that. He didn't pick the wise, the learned, did he? He picked very ordinary people, very diverse. Philip, that's a Greek name. He at least has some Greek influence, so there's another.
But there is a doctor.
What's that?
There is a doctor.
Luke.
Yep.
Right.
Luke.
Right. That's right. Luke is talked about as the beloved doctor. That comes later, though. And Paul was certainly well schooled, but I think Paul only came into being an apostle because of Jesus humbling him and breaking that idea that he knew it all, and in his zeal he could do whatever he wanted. So what an interesting group here. What a diverse group. Now here's our challenge. I think it's wonderful even in this room, the diversity that we can see in front of us. And yet how often we as a church tend to congregate with people like us, people that think like us. And that's a natural tendency, and that's been happening for a very long time. That's not just a present day thing. So something I found this week, talking about personality differences, leadership differences. You know, he had his three, right? Jesus had his three. I don't know how that made Andrew feel. He was one of the first, and he wasn't in the three. How did the others feel? Well, there was some fighting, right? And some bickering about who's going to be the leader. The personality differences. Who's the loud mouth, right? Peter. Whoever's going to say something wrong, it's probably Peter, right? Just blurts out whatever comes to his mind. We don't know much about some of the others, but like Philip and Thomas seem to be more of the analytical or skeptical ones. So there's all these differences here. Obviously political differences, prominent socioeconomic differences. That's who Jesus called. And he entrusted the mission of reaching the world initially to these 12 and the 70 and the women that came along to that body. That's who he entrusted his mission to. That's a wonderful picture. That's a wonderful goal or ideal here. We have one more verse, and I hope whoever's next week will come back to this and start with us, but it really does tie together my section 3 to 20. Then Jesus entered a house. I think this is Simon and Andrew's house in Capernaum. It doesn't say, but that's my thought. And again a crowd gathered so that he and his disciples were not even able to eat. Jeez, that's a lot of people. And so why does this book end this passage? Well, what have we learned? So this is why I think it is that that's the same house, the house of Simon and Andrew. That's why I think that. We see wonderful healing. We see Jesus preaching to the multitudes. We see them crowding in on him, driving out demons, impure spirits, and then calling the 12, the disciples, the apostles, to him. Think about this. In this gospel of action, with all the immediatelys and thens and next, what is needed? What's the key word? withdraw. Not to say I'm done, but to say I need time with God. This was what spoke to me most about this passage. It is wonderful when you have a chance to prepare, because you learn so much just from that preparation. Time to get away. Jesus withdrew. He prayed. He spent time with his Father. That's what we've already seen in Mark. That's what we see in this passage. And each time he withdraws, very frequently the crowds seek to find him. So it's not like it's a long-term type of thing. But that's what I think each of us need. So this may not, in fact, be a standard thing, but I'd like you to think about this for your own lives. What is something for you today? And I think it does very much tie back to the rope and the things that Michael had to say about us. The piece that I know I know every one of you knows this, but this is the place we need to be looking to right now for what is God saying to me? What is God saying to us? And I think these are perilous times that we are living in. And I know you have had some recent struggles in moving forward as a body, as I have. And that hurts. I can tell you very much. I miss my church family at the chapel, even though I was the one that chose to move away. I miss worshiping together with those believers. And yet, the call I feel to me is, okay, are you seeking me? Are you spending time with me? How are you doing in your relationship with me? Jesus saying that to me as an individual. So I want to encourage you that even in times that may seem challenging, missing the way things were, we can see God in new ways. And so I hope you'll be thinking about this. And am I correct? This is a potluck?
Yes.
Italian potluck coming?
Communion, potluck.
Yes. All right. If you're comfortable, this is not an assignment in terms of, I love giving assignments, right? I'm a retired professor. I don't miss grading, but I do miss giving assignments. My assignment would be that if you take it on voluntarily, speak to someone from this slide. Talk to someone in the coming minutes or during the potluck. What stood out to you? Or ask someone, what did you find interesting? What do you want to take away? And it may be something as simple as 5 minutes. Start with 5 minutes. What 5 minutes can I find? Often it's best for me in the morning. Sometimes it's in the evening, but with your Bible, with prayer, just with God, saying, God, I'm here. I need you. And again, my pride of rushing through days, thinking that I can accomplish all these things without that withdrawing with God. And it's not a withdrawing from I don't care, it's a withdrawing to be with God, just as Jesus did. That's the wonderful hope, I think, of this passage. And as you go through, I'm thrilled that you're going through Mark. I think you're going to see so much more that just comes alive. And it is really fun, I think, to do these types of things. And I'll just say it one more time. If you can possibly make one of the Mark dramas, this will really, I think, help it come alive. And the students do such a wonderful job. It's just a powerful experience. And they're wandering around, and there's some humor, but there's some real power in experiencing. I mean, the disciples just don't get it, and don't get it, and don't get it, until finally Jesus is in Jerusalem. But that's what hit me. Oh, that's me. I'm arguing about who's greatest. I'm that person. I'm Philip. I'm Thomas. I'm the one challenging or calling one to call down. A true story. how I came into a Bible-based faith was I was living next door to two guys who were with the Navigator organization, and they asked if I wanted to be in a study of the Gospel of John. And you know why I said yes? I like the names. I was that shallow, honestly. Oh yeah, John, I'm in. But that's what turned me to read a gospel. For me, it was John, but here's Mark, and see this come alive. And that's the hope I have for every one of you.